Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Let's Bet It, presented by Superbooks. But here on Pickswise and Pickswise.com. Very exciting Thursday. I've got Howard Bender in the saddle. Howard, what's up, bud? We got a big NFL week, but I'll be honest. When we were discussing the optics for this show, and we're like, hey, we're having Howard on. What should we talk about? Kyle and I were chatting about this yesterday, and he brought up Major League Baseball. So I believe this is the first time that we're discussing Major League Baseball here in the calendar year. And why not have the RotoBuzz guy on camera on par for us with the Major League Baseball chat? Of course, we'll get some NFL. Rob Guerrera, also 49ers podcast host, will be with us as well. We'll talk plenty about the conference championship games this week. But good morning, Howard. Welcome to baseball season.
Good morning, Jared. Thanks so much for having me. And dude, I was so stoked when I saw on the show sheet that we were going to talk some baseball. This is the first time in like 4 years that we're actually walking into the baseball season with no dark cloud over our head. There is no lockout. There are no big contract issues. There are no holdouts from players. We're seeing all the free agents sign. We've got a couple of rules changes that are going to get you excited about the action that's going to happen on the diamond. Like, finally, bring me back some baseball. I've missed it so much. It's been, baseball was my first passion. I grew up in New York City. I grew up a few subway stops away from Yankee Stadium. I was that stupid kid collecting money with his friends to sit out in the bleachers. So bring me my baseball. Thank you for bringing this. I can't wait. I was tapping into the futures market. Ooh, looks so good.
We're going to get to all of it, big fella. Take a deep breath. Okay, just a quick rundown for today. We will talk a little bit of MLB futures. I'll let Howard sink his teeth into baseball season. We're also going to talk about the 49ers specific. Yesterday we did Bengals. We had one of the Bengals hosts, Mo Egger, on from Cincinnati, obviously getting the AFC perspective. Today we're going to switch gears, get the NFC perspective. Rob Guerrera, Stats on Fire on Twitter, host of the 49ers podcast, The Gold Standard. He's going to be joining us just a few minutes. We'll also talk NFL trends. Howard, I saw you put a really long trend in here that I will let you divulge to the audience in just a minute. And, of course, we'll also do our plays of the day. But let's start at the top, leading off in the top of the first inning. Howard Bender with Major League Baseball news. So before we get into some future stuff, Howard, you mentioned the rules, and I think that's an important place to start because when you get – obviously the rules is how the game is played, and the structure of the game will change just a little bit this year, and it might affect some of the gambling market. So I will let you kind of lead off, pun intended, and talk about those rules and how you think they're going to change some of the ways that games will be played and, of course, bet on this year.
Well, the two big ones I think that everybody's going to be dealing with, two big issues. One is that they've banned the shift, so we're not going to deal with that. So a lot of your dead pull hitters who have been struggling are actually going to probably end up with like these big, massive holes. And I'm super stoked. I was on Kyle Schwarber's home run prop last season, and him in Philly was just looking so good. And now with, I'm being told that Trey Turner is now going to lead off for the Phillies, which is going to put Kyle Schwarber second. Could you imagine Trey Turner on first, no shift, getting that lead? Yeah. Now here's the issue. The thing. I mean, people are talking about the size of the bases being increased, and that's going to decrease the amount of running room that the runner's going to have to deal with. I mean, they're making it sound like they're going to be these giant 4 foot by 4 foot bases sitting there. But I mean, they're increasing by a little bit of size. The real key, I think, is that pitchers are not allowed to either step off the rubber or throw to first more than 3 times in an at-bat. So if you're talking about Trey Turner sitting there on first, there's no shift allowed. So they've got to keep the guys over there. They can't move them around or whatever. So now you're going to have to watch Trey Turner stealing bases. And what about that hole that Kyle Schwarber's going to have, up the line? I mean, it's going to be mammoth there. So I think what we're going to see is a lot of dead pull hitters actually get a nice little bump in their batting average. We're going to probably see a little uptick in runs scored and home and RBI for them. For your speedsters, you're going to see a boost in stolen bases. And this has been a problem in MLB for probably about the last 5 or 6 years. The downward trend in speed has been very, very noticeable. I think we're going to see a massive uptick this year, which means your stolen base props, your run scored props for certain players are going to be great. Your in-game betting is going to be a ton of fun now, especially once you see a pitcher step off the rubber at least just once. You're going to be like, boom, boom, boom. If there are runners on base, you're going to want to try and make some of that happen. So, a lot of the things that they're doing right now, they keep talking about speeding up the game. I think we're going to see a lot of action on the diamond because of these recent changes.
Love that. Everything I heard, I'm trying to, in my brain, when you speak, process it in terms of gambling analysis. And everything you said just flashed runs, overs. And we've seen a downtrend in the amount of runs scored recently. A lot of that too can be, the pitchers have gotten just insane, the relievers especially. And the live betting in baseball has always been something I've paid close attention to, because let's say the starter goes out there, puts up an absolute, just terrible performance, 3, 4, 5 runs in the first 2 or 3 innings. The live total goes from 8 to 12. And then the manager makes a change. Well, it's basically a different game once they bring in a new pitcher. And then I've seen a lot of those games 5-6-0 in the second inning, and it's 6-1 in the 7th. Because the manager slows the game down, makes a pitching change, and then moves. So the live betting has always been, to me, a big part of baseball. And now with these rule changes, it's going to be very interesting to see what nuance is there. Do we get just sports books across the board bumping up totals right out of the gate? Do the totals start a little lower and they creep higher as scoring increases throughout the year? All things to monitor, all things we'll get to once we get to the games. But the futures market, I think, also will be affected a little bit. You might have a guy like Trey Turner who steals 75 bases that maybe gets a little bit more love in the MVP market. And I know that is somewhere you are looking, Mr. Bender, for your first future that you'd like to divulge to us this morning.
Yeah, what is it? Trey Turner's like plus 1,200, plus 1,300 over on for the MVP. And listen, it's rare that they give it to a speedster, an all-around player. You always see the MVP going to the dude with the biggest power numbers, and I get that power sells. But here you go, Trey Turner is going to hit for more power now. I mean, he's about a 20 home run guy. Philadelphia, it not only helps boost the home run total, just your overall your hit total as well. It's one of those parks that plays very friendly to hitters, and I think that Turner now. Yeah, I mean, he's got that potential. He's got that potential right now of being like a 25-50 type guy to start off. And while you're going to see a lot of power hitters doing their thing, I think Trey Turner, between his on base percentage, his batting average, his runs scored, his potential for an uptick in power and a massive uptick in speed. I think that actually, I think that's worth sprinkling on. Do I really want to go for the favorite at a plus 400, or do I want to try and get some value out of it and do a plus 1,200 for Trey Turner, a guy who, you traditionally don't want to invest heavily in a guy after he signs a big deal and he changes to different teams.
Yeah.
But Turner's going back to the NL East. He's very familiar with the teams there. He's very familiar with the pitching over there. So I don't think that you're looking at some sort of like a big transition going Washington to Los Angeles back over to the East Coast to Philly. So lock me in a little Trey Turner there in the National League MVP.
I like it. And again, I like the best part about it is you're right. Usually when guys switch leagues, there's a little bit of a adjustment period to the pitchers. We don't think about that as much because we don't view the leagues as these different entities. But I'll be honest, I do think it is a good handicap to make. I'll give you one here really quick, and then I'll let you get into the rest before we bring on our NFC Championship guest here. I'm very fascinated with Vladimir Guerrera Jr. And the reason why is because of what's happening in Toronto. The Rogers Center dimensions are changing drastically this year. Center field's moving in 3 feet from 400 to 397. Right center and left center are moving in from 375 to 357 and 366 respectively. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but you would assume that you take Guerrero's numbers and you have to add to them. And let's be honest, he had a fantastic year last season. But you have to increase what his numbers are going to be next year if he's playing in that ballpark. I mean, you could say that about any of the Blue Jays players, but I think Guerrero is the only one that really realistically has a chance to win any awards. I would say whichever number's better, bet, whether it's the MVP number or the home run leader number. And I know that sounds crazy in a league with Aaron Judge, but let's be honest, I can't see Aaron Judge having that kind of year. If he has another 60 home run season, then I'm going to be a very happy Yankees fan. But what do you think about Vlad and the Blue Jays in general with the Rogers Center fences coming in this season?
I mean, I couldn't believe when I saw it. I mean, down the line is going to be like 315. And I'm like, really? In the Rogers Center? I mean, the place plays like a bandbox as is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, listen, I love Vlad. I mean, Vlad is just a beautiful swing, just a natural ball player that you want to invest in. What was it? 2 years ago, I was making money hand over fist because on the day after, on a day that he would go, the day after he would go 0 for 3 or 0 for 4, I just kept hammering his total bases props because there were never 2 games in a row where Vladimir Guerrero went 0 for. I think he did it like 3 times all season in 2021. And then last year it was another one where you could just kind of rely on him. I love him, and I can totally get the putting on the MVP for plus 1,200, but I also love Yordan Alvarez, and with the lineup that he's got surrounding him, the development that we're seeing. I mean, guys like Alex Bregman and Kyle Tucker working around him. They just brought in Jose Abreu. I think there's going to be massive protection for Yordan Alvarez to take his game to another level. And he's the guy, I mean, he's plus 1,100. So Vlad's plus 1,200. Yordan Alvarez is plus 1,100. I don't mind sprinkling on both.
Yeah. Yeah. The key with these markets, guys, and it holds true with what I just did with the NFL. You don't shove all your chips into the middle on one guy in these markets. First of all, they're very high hold markets. So you're not going to win on average. Like for example, the game to game market in the NFL is like 3.5 to 5% hold, meaning for every dollar you put down, 5 cents is already going to the sports book, regardless of what the outcome is. That's just the way that the market's constructed. In the futures, it's like 10 to 15 cents. And some sports books, I'm going for a schwitz after the show. Some sports books, it's more like 15 to 20 cents. So you put $1 down, 15 cents of it's going to the books, regardless if you win your bet or not. Again, that's just the way the market's constructed. So my strategy with these markets is I kind of construct like a financial portfolio, and I've got a little bit of Apple and a little bit of Tesla and a little bit of Microsoft. I sprinkle on a few different stocks, and I hope that they, grow over the course of a 6-month stretch. I did that in the NFL this year. Earlier in the year, we put a little on Chiefs, 8-1 to win the Super Bowl. Then we put a little on Bengals, 16-1. Then we put a little on Niners at 3-1 to win the NFC. A little Eagles, 4-1 to win the NFC way back in October. And then we get to championship weekend, and we've got all these little plants that are ready to be hatched. So that's my strategy with these, and we'll get to more of Howard's futures picks with the baseball world in a minute. But let's transition to NFL right now, because listen, that's why you're all here, right? It's all about the National Football League championship weekend. So let's bring in our guest, Rob Stats Guerrera. You can find him on Twitter at Stats on Fire, host of the Gold Standard. It's a 49ers podcast. Of course, you can find that on YouTube as well. Rob, good morning, sir. Not a bad week for your little group there, your little Niners fandom group, because they've got a chance to head into Philly and punch a ticket to the Super Bowl.
It's amazing. I never would have thought of that, but here we are.
Yeah. So let's dive right in. Brock Purdy, he's going to be all the buzz, I'm sure, this week as he gets another chance to prove why he's a starting quarterback in the NFL. He's been nails so far. That's what I've been saying. Because when I watch him play, he doesn't have that rookie tendency to give us the happy feet when the blitz is coming and he's under pressure. And I will say he did take a little bit more pressure last week against Dallas, and he showed you that, okay, good defenses can slow this Niners offense down. I think we're going to see that with Philly this week, but I think Dallas's defense is better than Philly. What do you make of this matchup? Brock Purdy, can he play turnover free again against this Eagles defense, which is still pretty formidable.
Yeah, he's going to have to perform under pressure. He was under pressure 14 times against the Cowboys. He was just 3 of 10 when he was pressured for less than 30 yards. Like, he's going to have to produce. The Eagles have 4 guys on that defensive line with at least 10 sacks. So it's not a question of will he be under pressure. The question is, what will he do when he's under that pressure?
That's definitely something to take a look at there. I mean, I think he definitely is the linchpin of what happens with the 49ers. Although I'll tell you what, the Philadelphia Eagles rank 21st in DVOA against the run. If they're, even bringing in Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph to help stuff the run, they've still kind of struggled against it. So now you're putting them up against Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell, even throw Deebo Samuel into the backfield, which is where they're lining him up. However, Rob, let me ask you, McCaffrey with the calf, Elijah Mitchell with the groin, Deebo Samuel with the ankle. How do you see these injuries affecting the game flow for them out of the backfield? Or is this Kyle Shanahan just being like, yeah, they're hurt, but we'll see?
The guy that I'm least worried about is Deebo Samuel. He wasn't supposed to practice yesterday. Lo and behold, he was actually out on the field in a limited capacity. So I think he's going to be fine. I'm worried about McCaffrey because if you remember, he was not really on the field the last 2 drives for the 49ers against the Cowboys. And those were gotta have it drives, gotta keep possession of the ball, drain the clock drives. And he would come out for 3rd downs, but then he would go right back to the sideline. So clearly he is not 100%. The fact that he didn't practice yesterday worries me. Elijah Mitchell is banged up a little bit too with a groin injury. That poor guy just cannot stay healthy out on the field. So I think the running game is going to be a little bit slowed, and we may see more Deebo in the backfield because of it.
Yeah, I was looking at rushing attempts prop for McCaffrey, 13.5. And 2 out of the last 3 weeks. Last week he only had 10. He had 15 against Seattle and 10 against Arizona. To me, that's an interesting prop to the under. What's your thoughts there on McCaffrey props this week? Would you blind bet them all under, or is there one specific prop you think maybe the volume will be a little bit decreased? You don't want to bet under yards in case he pops the big one, but overall, down to down, the volume for McCaffrey may be a little bit below our expectation.
I think so. And this is the tricky part with that. Normally, Kyle Shanahan does not split carries with running backs. If he's got a healthy guy, he usually has one workhorse, and that's it, even if the backup is a pretty good option like Elijah Mitchell. But because McCaffrey is nicked up and banged up and could potentially get worse as that game goes along, I don't know that I would be taking the over on a lot of McCaffrey props.
Yeah, I'm looking at McCaffrey in a number of spots of actually, playoff one and dones and DFS and even betting on the props where I'm looking at fading McCaffrey for that reason. Let me spin it a little bit here. 49ers defense, obviously phenomenal. We saw them struggle a little bit against CeeDee Lamb. He's an explosive weapon for the Cowboys. He had over 100 yards in that game. They did, obviously contain the other wide receivers, but you're talking about Noah Brown and you're talking about T.Y. Hilton, who's 137 years old. Now it's A.J. Brown, who's off the injury report, not dealing with a hip injury. Devonta Smith looks fantastic. Dallas Goedert is going to, Fred Warner is going to have to be really preoccupied with where Dallas Goedert's going to be on the field. How do you see this 49ers holding up, and what are your thoughts on Eagles receiving core props?
That's the big question, because it's sort of been weird with the 49ers defense. If you go back and look at their schedule, there usually is a wide receiver that goes off, that goes a little nuts, whether it's Devontae Adams or Terry McLaurin or DK Metcalf or Cooper Kupp. Even when they would blow the Rams out, there would still be a wide receiver that just gashes them for a huge game. The problem is the Eagles have 2 of those guys that can do that. So great if the 49ers let one of them go off, but if there's 2, that's a little scary. And the big thing that gives me pause is the 49ers have allowed 8 receptions of 50 yards or more this year. That's the most in the NFL. You can hurt them deep down the field. Obviously, Philly has 2 guys that can do that. So I think that's where the Philly offense scares me the most. Their wide receivers on the outside. If you're going to take an over, I would go over A.J. Brown receptions, over A.J. Brown yards. Those are the two I feel most confident about.
Oh, wow. We're talking to Rob Guerrera at Stats on Fire on Twitter, host of the Gold Standard 49ers podcast. You can find it on YouTube as well. Again, a very exciting week for Niners Nation, back in the NFC Championship game, trying to punch a ticket to the Super Bowl. So one of the things that stood out to me in this game, Rob, was, and one of the things that I wanted to focus in on diving into this week, was how the Niners defense fares against mobile quarterbacks. And there was really only one example that really stood out to me. I think the first week of the season against the Bears in the rain and Justin Fields, I kind of give them a pass there, especially because it was Trey Lance at quarterback. Then later in the season, they faced the Atlanta Falcons. And Marcus Mariota really hurt him with a lot of quarterback design runs. He hurt him in play action, and the RPO game was very effective. It was one of the worst performances of the year for the Niners defense. They lost the game by 2 scores. Do you think that there's adjustments to be made from that point? Do you think a lot of the things that we saw in that game with Mariota and the quarterback design runs, there's something might be an issue for the Niners defense again this week? Or is DeMeco Ryans going to be able to make that proper adjustment and keep Jalen Hurts buttoned up in the run game?
Well, that's definitely become a narrative about the 49ers defense, is that they struggle against mobile quarterbacks. Show me the defense that doesn't struggle against mobile quarterbacks. The other thing to remember is, in that Falcons game, 8 of 11 defensive starters did not play for the 49ers. That's how banged up they were in that game. So it's essentially an entirely different defense going up against Jalen Hurts this week. Now, that said, I do think that that Philly's going to have success with Hurts on the ground, but I don't think it's going to be so much with the designed runs. What I worry about is the scrambles, because I've seen a lot of times this year where the Niners rush the passer and they rush past the depth of the quarterback because they're so desperate to get a sack. And what that does is that opens up rush lanes on either side for the quarterback to scramble and hurt them. We saw Dak Prescott do it a couple of times last week, and I think that's really where Hurts is going to hurt the 49ers, not with the design stuff, with the scrambling.
It definitely makes sense. Absolutely. Once you get chased out of that pocket, it's, you can definitely take off. So Rob, can I put you on the spot here? I mean, Eagles by 2.5 is what the spread says right now. Over under is 46.5. You got a prediction?
I would take the Eagles and give the points. The Eagles were my pick to make the Super Bowl in the NFC before the season started, which did not earn me any points with 49er fans, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Does that hurt a little?
Gotta be careful there. The Gold Standard, man. They're not going to like you too much out there in the Bay.
But, I mean, I could end up being correct. So, I just want to point that out. But I would take the Eagles.
Say that you are going to be correct. So, yeah.
My prediction is I think it's going to be 28-21, around there, Philadelphia. The Niners are not going to get blown out, but I just think that Philly is the team the 49ers wanted to be with Trey Lance, right? That's the kind of offense they wanted to have with the Jalen Hurts type guy that could run, that could pass, that could scramble. And I just think that Philly has the more complete team than the 49ers. It's close. Plus, the Eagles are at home, so I'll go 28-21 Philly.
All right,
I'm down here in Half Moon Bay, Rob. So you can come take refuge down here in the Southern Peninsula if you need some. I'm here for you.
I may have to, depending on how this one turns out.
I didn't know, Howard, that you were in California. We're going to have to get to that at a different time for a different day. But that's Rob Stats Guerrera. Find him on Twitter at Stats on Fire, host of the Gold Standard 49ers podcast, does fantastic stuff, and is giving us the prediction for the game, even the final score. So you have it all for you there in a neat and tidy package. Rob, good luck this weekend, and good luck dealing with your fan base and your viewers. If the Eagles do in fact win this week, it's probably going to be one of those weeks where you get a lot of emails and DMs.
Yeah, they'll be coming for me, but I'll be ready.
There you go. He's on fire, everyone. Rob Guerrera, appreciate your time this morning. And I think he makes a really good point, Howard. As we transition to some NFL trends before we dip back to Major League Baseball for the end of this show. And I think the most important thing to keep in mind here is I do think the Eagles defense has had a bit of an easy go of it the last few weeks. And I mentioned this on Pickswise Playbook. I tweeted this clip out last night because I think of all the parts in this game that intrigued me the most, I do think the Eagles defense has faced just a lackluster group of offensive lines over the last 8 weeks. And the only two times that they have faced, and let's be honest, the Niners with Trent Williams, it's one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. And the Eagles have not faced an offensive line of this caliber since they faced the Dallas Cowboys and the New Orleans Saints, and they lost both those games. The other so they've played 7 games in the last 2 months. 5 of those games, 3 of them came against the Giants, and then you had the Bears and the Titans, who are like bottom 4, like literally like the dregs of the dregs offensive lines. And you get this Eagles front with Jonathan Gannon that's super aggressive, as Rob mentioned, 4 guys that have double-digit sacks, and they're just running through people. And it's just a beeline straight to the quarterback. And you saw that one game against the Saints. And I know that game was a little intriguing because it was Gardner Minshew and not Jalen Hurts. And on the defensive side, of course, the Eagles thought to themselves, hey, we still have 2 more games to clinch the 1 seed. Maybe the urgency wasn't quite there, but it was definitely there against the Cowboys on the road against their biggest rival. And Dallas scored 40 points in that game. So I could absolutely see the Niners offense having a lot of success. I definitely see the Eagles offense having a lot of success too. I think this is an over game, and I think it's a close game back and forth. Eagles probably win by a field goal, 6 to 7 points. It's a good teaser spot for the Niners, getting them up through both keys. But when you look at that game specifically, what did you like most about what Rob said, and where maybe you can counter with a wager there?
Well, I mean, his point taken about the secondary being the weak spot, the Achilles heel, and you can let AJ Brown go off, but that means you have to shut down Devonta Smith, and then you still have Dallas Goedert in there. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in that passing game. I'm also kind of curious to see about Jalen Hurts because, maybe it was because the game seemed very well in hand against the Giants, but he was sliding early. He was run out of bounds quickly. He wasn't looking, I'm not going to say that he was gun shy about taking a hit, but, it definitely looked like he was, hedging on his own personal run. So I actually have this game as a slight under this week because I do believe in both defensive units, because here's the thing,
okay.
I've got, I look at the ground game for the 49ers because Kyle Shanahan likes to use the run to set up the pass. You look at the Bengals are the classic. We set up we use the pass to set up the run. We'll air it out the entire first half. We'll jump onto a lead and then we'll hand the ball off to Joe Mixon. Easy peasy. For Shanahan's offense, it's all predicated on the run. And if Christian McCaffrey is not healthy, and you are relying solely on Debo as being your, or you're using, a banged up Elijah Mitchell and you're using Debo more in the backfield, you are taking away from some of the passing game. And if Brock Purdy is not on, because we saw him, he was kind of off in that first half, against the Cowboys. And if he's not on and they can get him rattled or a little bit of pressure, I see this game more as like a 23-21 sort of a game, which, kind of makes me want to take the Eagles, but it makes me want to, take the Eagles money line, but take the 49ers with the 2.5 points.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. Okay, let's move back to your trends there, Howard. What trend is your friend here for today? You've got a long one.
Yeah, well, I've got 2 actually.
Yeah, give it.
So, one for the Eagles. Here you go. Number 1 seeds have been the host teams in 43 of the last 60 conference championship games and have gone 29-14 straight up, but 22-21 against the spread. So while that favors the Eagles there, you also might want to take a look at the 49ers with the points, because I do think that this could be, like I said, a 23-21 sort of a game, last second field goal. We'll see what happens with with that action there. But the trend itself says to take the Eagles for the money line, and it also says look at the 49ers with the points, because there's really the against the spread aspect of it is, it's a 50, it's a coin flip almost. It's 50-50, 22-21. The other trend that I had, and if you want to just flip it over to the AFC for a sec, teams who have played each other in season meet up again in the playoffs. The teams that lost in season, 6-9 straight up, 4-11 against the spread.
Wow.
That's what's going on right now. When hosting that same opponent, I know everybody's in on the Bengals, and I hate when when everybody in the world is in on the Bengals, but I don't really know how to not take the Bengals and lay that point.
Everyone is in on the Bengals.
Everyone.
And that's okay. So
no, it's
let's do a quick market update because it is relevant this morning. It's very relevant this morning, and we probably should have got to it off the top of the show, but the line did flip back this morning. The Chiefs are now favored again. And that was
even better.
Very predictable. Very, very predictable. I tweeted it out yesterday. The second that video came out of Mahomes practicing, I knew it was going to move again. Because now let's just preface it. It's not a significant move. I know that the line was +1 yesterday, and now it's -1. And you're like, oh my God, it's moved 2 points. It's moved like the smallest amount that 2 points could possibly move. That's how much it moved, because the win probability difference between +1 and -1 is like 1%, because it's like, you can't win a game by less than 1. So exactly. So it's not a significant move in terms of win probability, but the optics of the game now have changed, because you could say, well, now the Chiefs are a favorite, and yesterday they were an underdog. And I think that's a fair statement to make. And I think what it does is it takes away a lot of the teaser opportunities with Kansas City. I was very fortunate to get in +1.5. If I would have waited a little bit longer, I would have gotten +2.5 on my Chiefs teaser. But I did tease the Chiefs up from 1.5 to 7.5, and then I teased the Niners up from 2.5 to 8.5. And that's probably going to be my quote unquote best bet of the week, even though it's not available anymore. I think that'll be I hope everyone bet that when I put it on my spreadsheet a couple days ago, because you're not going to get that opportunity again. I knew once Mahomes was trending in a positive direction, regardless of how 100% on the scale he is, if he's 70, if he's 50, if he's 60, doesn't matter. Once he was confirmed in and playing, I knew the Chiefs were going to close the favorite. I mean, it's just, it is absurd for them to be a home underdog in a game where Patrick Mahomes starts in the playoffs. It's absurd. There was no way that it was happening. So they will close the favorite. I don't know how big, likely 1.5. Maybe it moves another 0.5 point, but between now and Sunday. But I think the other side of it is now we get maybe an opportunity to tease the Bengals up from 1.5 to 7.5. And I think that's going to be something that I will strongly consider as we get to the weekend. I could have done it very early in the week. Then it flipped. And of course, it's going to flip back. But that's where we're at as we get the NFC and AFC championship games under our belt for today. Of course, we'll talk about it tomorrow, and we will talk about it on Sunday here on Let's Bet It. Before we get into our plays of the day, I don't want to rob you, Howard, of your baseball passion. You have 2 Cy Young bets and 2 rookie bets that I haven't heard any of these guys, so I'm fascinated to hear your case for Rookie of the Year. But let's start with Cy Young, Shane McClanahan, Sandy Alcantara, 2 guys that we absolutely should know after the seasons they had last year.
Yeah, I love McClanahan. McClanahan, I've been very in on him in the fantasy community for since he jumped into the majors. So I'm looking at him now. 3rd year, looks strong, great arm, live arm, good strikeout rate. It's a tougher division, obviously, because you've got a lot of hitter-friendly parks like Toronto, like Yankee Stadium for that matter. Even Fenway is and Camden Yards are both hitters' parks. So, but I think that Boston is definitely ticked down a little bit as far as what their power is that they're going to bring to the table. The Orioles on the rise, but still not really coming up there. So I like McClanahan here. That's actually something I forgot to mention as far as like one of the other changes that we're looking at here in baseball is the imbalanced schedule is gone. Like you're no longer playing teams in your division 18 times. So now all of a sudden there you're going to start, McClanahan's going to start looking at fewer AL East teams, and he's going to be looking at more like, more Royals and more Rangers and more.
Fantastic point.
I'm very happy about that. And Sandy Alcantara, I actually sprinkled in on him. I know he's the favorite now. I sprinkled something on him last year. He was at like plus 1,200 when I got him for Cy Young, and he was he was looking really sharp and looking, like he was about to take that next step. He had a great season last year. I think he takes it even better this year here. So McClanahan in the AL, and then Sandy Alcantara in the National League there. For
Love
Rookie
that.
of the Year, Grayson Rodriguez, he's, it's tough because he got hurt. He
What team
injured
does
his
he play
elbow
for?
last year.
I have no idea. I don't
The
even know who he
Orioles.
is.
Dude,
I was going
this
to ask
guy,
you about the Orioles in the futures market. Do you think the Orioles of the World Series ticket 60-1 has any value? You think can they make the playoffs this year? Can the Orioles make
I think
the
they
playoffs?
can make the playoffs. I don't think they have. You know what the problem is, and one of the biggest problems is that their pitching from year to year has always just been rough, and they've never really invested a whole lot in pitching. They've always gone in the last couple of years, with that Earl Weaver mentality of just give me the 3-run bomb, and that's how we're going to get it done. We're not going to give away outs. We're not going to worry about stolen bases, and let's just hit for power. And that should, hopefully back our pitching. Well, now all of a sudden, the pitching's ticking up a little bit. And Grayson Rodriguez, absolute stud, fantastic arm. You're going to love watching him pitch. His great movement on his fastball that I just absolutely adore. He was dealing with an elbow injury last year, and so they shut him down. So it's a bit of a risk here, but I genuinely believe that if he just gets himself off to a really rock-solid start, they'll carry him, in through the beginning of the season. And then depending on what their playoff situation is, they'll start to limit his innings a little bit in the second half, but not enough, I don't think, that he can't shine as the Rookie of the Year. In the National League, Corbin Carroll, outfielder for the Arizona Diamondbacks.
Nice.
Was off to a really hot start in 2021 in the minors, hurt his shoulder. They shut him down. They were like, listen, this kid, there's too much talent here. Great OBP, great plate discipline already for a youngster. We really liked what we see here. And then last year, what did we see from him? He started off in the rookie league, he was rehabbing everything, worked his way up, made that jump from AA to AAA in no time, and then they put him into the majors, and he still had a 330 OBP in the majors, making such a quick jump in the minor league system. He should be the starting center fielder for the Diamondbacks this year. And we also know that that Chase Field or the Bob or whatever it's called these days, I don't even remember. It's a nice hitter's park for him, so I think he'll actually do fairly well. He's the favorite in the National League. I don't really love taking the favorites, but at plus 440, I mean, why not sprinkle a little something on him?
Yeah, again, the baseball futures market, most of these guys in the rookie markets I've never even heard of, but that's why we have Howard Bender on to fill us in and educate us on everything that's happening. Our own cleanup hitter. Speaking of cleanup hitting, Let's Bet. It is presented by Superbook Sports. Can you beat Vegas this football season? Superbook gives you the chance every week to go head-to-head with the best odds makers in Las Vegas. No fancy computer algorithms. No one across the pond setting lines for American sports. Just the best team of traders in the business. Superbook here in beautiful Las Vegas. Plus, some of the best odds boosts and promo bets in the country. Arizona, Colorado, Iowa, Nevada, New Jersey, or Tennessee. Download the Superbook Sports app or visit superbook.com. Start your battle against Vegas. All right, from superbook.com to pickswise.com, as my pal Lauren Jabara would say. We've got some 3-stars on the site today. A couple of college basketball picks. Arizona State, Washington total. Joe Williams checking in there. Lock Mamba's got a side bet, Iowa at Michigan State, excuse me. And then also, we have an NBA bet, Clippers Spurs, side bet from Philip Tomich. And always my favorite when we have the ponies on full display today. Gulfstream Race 6. Shane Ketteridge has a bet for you there. So lots for you on this Thursday afternoon, turning into Thursday evening. College hoops, NBA, and pony picks, horse racing, Gulfstream Park over on Pickswise.com. All right, Howard. Play of the day time, my friend. What do you got on the board today?
You know what? I'm actually going to go over to NBA, and I know that it's not the norm for me, but one of the things that when we talk about trends, what you want is a player on the rise, not after the guy's done it for 6 straight games, and then you're worried about the little pull off there. Give me Jalen Duren, center for the Detroit Pistons, over 9.5 rebounds. For him, I got it at minus 120 this morning. I think that in some books it's at 10.5 there. If you can get it at 9.5, that's where you want it. He's had 10 rebounds in each of his last 2 games. And the Brooklyn Nets have been giving up a lot of boards to the big men over the last couple of games for themselves as well. So Jalen Duren, over 9.5 rebounds, give that to me at -120.
Love it. I'm going back to the college hardwood tonight, and I'm going to bet the under 125.5 in Northern Kentucky and Green Bay. It is a Horizon League matchup, one of my favorite conferences. One thing you'll learn about me, and when we get now into the college basketball landscape, is I tend to focus on 2 or 3 conferences at a time. The Mountain West being one, and the Horizon League is another one that I really like. And this Northern Kentucky team has been a big fan. I've been a big fan of this team for a while. They're one of the best defensive teams in the conference, probably the best defensive team in the conference. And they're facing the worst team, perhaps in all of college basketball tonight, Green Bay. They've lost 11 straight games. They're 2-19 on the season. They do not shoot it well at all. And these teams just faced each other 2 weeks ago on January 14th. And the game ended 74-53, which would have been over this total of 125.5, just barely by 1 bucket. But in that game, Green Bay was shooting lights out. It was a home game for Green Bay. And they were 10 of 22 from 3. Again, this is one of the worst shooting teams in college basketball. They are 324th in effective field goal percentage, 351st in three-point percentage. They're shooting 28% from three-point this year. But in that game against Northern Kentucky's very good defense, they shot it over 45%. They made 10 threes. They will not make 10 threes tonight. They will make significantly less than that. I have full faith that Northern Kentucky's coach, Darren Horn, will make the proper adjustments, and we will see a much slower-paced, lower-scoring game than we saw a couple of weeks ago up in Green Bay. So I'll go under Green Bay, Northern Kentucky, 125.5. Had a rough night in college hardwood last night. I'm glad I wasn't on the show. I would have given out some losers. So here we are back again, trying to regain our form. As, man, I'll tell you what, I've been so streaky the last few weeks, Howard. I go from losing 13 straight wildcard NFL bets to winning 10 out of 16. I won like 4 college basketball bets in a row last week. Then last night I lost 5 straight. I can't, it's like I'm either all in or all out. I don't know what it is about the juju here in the desert, but it's been streaky. I've been streaky. So we'll see if we can't get a hot streak tonight. We appreciate you hopping on this morning, bud. Any parting shots before we say farewell for the day?
No, a little surprise for you though. I'll be out there in the desert joining you in a couple of weeks. So we should meet at the book and
we
and
definitely should. I heard it's one of the fantasy sports writers conference, right? FSGA. Am I getting that acronym
Fantasy
correct?
Sports and FSGA, Fantasy Sports and Gaming Association. So we'll be in town for a couple of days there. I think we should break bread, have a nosh. We should make some bets together and
go for a schwitz. Who knows? Get to one of the saunas
I'll
here
go for
in town. I mean, the schwitzes, the spas here. I don't know where you're staying, but they are unmatched. One of my favorite things to do is to have a staycation. Check into the hotel for the night, go to the spa, have a nice meal. But that's neither here nor there. That is Howard Bender. I'm Jared Smith. This is Pickswise Let's Bet It, presented by Superbook Sports. Have a great day.